For sure. Yeah, for sure. And one final note as well, because I know that there will be breeders watching this, and I've had a lot of breeders ask me the same question that you asked. What about breeding a NIDO positive snake that's asymptomatic? And I have to say, that's a terrible idea. I always tell it like you're putting an incredible amount of stress on the animal breeding it in a regular scenario, let alone if it's a NIDO positive animal. But we have to think about the ethics of doing this, because even though all the babies will come out and they will not have the virus, what are the true ethics of breeding an animal that you know is sick, that you know isn't okay? And even if it's asymptomatic, you are increasing its chances of mortality by doing so. So I want to add in that I always tell breeders, I do not recommend breeding your asymptomatic animals. I think that that can flip them heavily as well and create a symptomatic animal. And it has to be their decision what they would do with that snake. But breeding it shouldn't even be something that's on the table.
Yes. And I think that is a perfect kind of springboard to move us into the next conversation, is sort of the ethics of keeping and the ethics of breeding. And, you know, I don't want to phrase this without attacking people, but there's a lot of ball python breeders that do walk the line of ethics when they come to, breeding. Like, it's no surprise that somebody might consider doing, making an asymptomatic positive NIDO test or animal with a negative animal just in order to try to get a special morph. We see that all the time, a spider, all these different morphs that we know have ethical issues to them. So it's no surprise that you can kind of throw that into the hat as well of ethical questions when it comes to breeding snakes. And ball pythons are always the most extreme example because of the amount of morphs that are on the table and because of the amount of people actually keeping and breeding them. There's nothing wrong with keeping and breeding ball pythons. I'm not saying that at all, but there's a huge volume of people doing it, which means it's going to be the highest number of ethical questions that arise from that scenario. So why don't we talk about how you already talked about how you got into keeping them, but what was your mindset as far as, going with larger enclosures?